Nope. We got to take a deep breath. Tell everybody what your podcast is because we have new
Yes.
viewers every week.
Okay. My name is Monica Perez. I have a podcast. It's called the Drive Time News Blast. It's part of my propaganda report feed. I do it with my co-host, Brad Binkley. You may know us from, I had a WSB radio show for 8.5 years. I think it died of COVID-19, but that's the story for another day. I just think that, I wonder if those people are mad at me for thinking that out loud. But regardless, my podcast is smoking because I do it every single day. It's news, up to the minute news from a perspective of truth, liberty, and justice. Trust me, even if you don't agree with me, you're going to like it. There's no propaganda, no spin. And if you want to support me, go to my patreon.com/propaganda report page.
I say it all the time. If you can watch this and you're a liberal or a conservative, if my team's always right, the other team's always wrong, you're going to love some of what she says and you're going to hate some of what she says. That's what I think is good about it.
But it's always about thinking.
Yeah. Or learning, being willing. And, sometimes the older you get, learning new things or learning to question, we quit questioning our values or our reason why at some point.
I have a theory about that.
Well, I just did a seminar. I just did a video for a business here locally. And one of the things I told them is, learning is a very vulnerable thing because you have to admit to yourself, I just don't know everything. And somehow in our 20s or 30s, we kind of say, this is who I am. And it's really hard to break that tissue once it's healed.
I think I know why.
Let's hear it.
Because you have invested a lot in that worldview. And it's at one of my sisters coined it the ethical glass ceiling. You can't, and I think we talked about this last time, Upton Sinclair or John Updike or somebody said it's very hard to teach a man something that if his paycheck depends on him not learning it. So if you're invested in a certain way of thinking, but to tell you the truth, I don't think anybody who's listening doesn't have, I think you and I share the same fundamental principles. The question is, where does pragmatism come in? Where do you compromise? What exactly is happening in the world and how should I view it? Do I consent to this? That's what we're talking about. We're talking about where the rubber hits the road, but the principles themselves, I think that we're all kind of on the same page.
I agree. And before I start diving into your Twitter account and we start asking you some questions, I too have a podcast, duringthebreakpodcast.com and dayfirepodcast.com. I have a Patreon. Go look it up. It's on it's in the description. It's all over the place. But after you visit Monica's and after you like hers and subscribe to her YouTube and give her some money, take a little bit and come over here and help Clint as he gets old, try to earn a living. I want to do what I love as I get older. Dadgummit. Real quick.
I have a really good friend just joined the chat.
Go ahead.
One of my best friends in the world. Hi, Deirdre. Thanks for listening. You don't have to stay the whole time. One of my
your best friend in the world?
I love her to death. One of them. She probably, I don't even probably get on her A-list, but she's like at the top of my
Let's
A-list.
give her some love. Look at that. Bam. Just like that. Thank you for watching. We appreciate it. All right. Hey, let's do this. I've got some screenshots of your Twitter, but before we do that, you're trying to grow your YouTube page.
Yes. I am going to I'm going to start putting our videos on my YouTube channel, and it's youtube.com/Monica Perez. And I used to have a lot of activity there. I could monetize stuff, but I got taken down a couple of years ago for something I said about Sheriff Israel of the Parkland event, and I just stopped posting because I didn't want to get completely removed, but I didn't realize that if you're dormant long enough, you have no ability to monetize. So I just want to throw an ad up once in a while, and I can't do that until I get some watches. So
go subscribe
and watch this on YouTube.
And you're like a 1 point something thousand already. You're doing pretty good.
Yes, it'll be fine.
Well, we had a question, and I actually screenshot it, and I don't know if you can read it, but let's start it with that. Can you read that?
Yes, Franny and I are both curious to know exactly which of the first 10 amendments are violated by the COVID reaction and how. So I think let's just do one. We should do this question every time. And let's just do one amendment at a time. And for me, the number one amendment that was hit by COVID, and I've been talking about how the First Amendment is first for a reason. I think the Fourth Amendment was the first that was ever truly gutted because they don't want you to be able to conspire against them. But the First Amendment, let's just read it. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So the Congress has not made a law establishing or prohibiting religion, but that has been widely read, probably overread if you ask me, to pertain to the states by incorporating the 14th Amendment to mean that the Bill of Rights applies to the states, but it's very expressly clear in the First Amendment. It addresses Congress, but it's overread, and people say that that means you can't even put the 10 Commandments in your state house. So by that reading, and this is when I say libertarians die by the sword, but they don't live by the sword. And maybe this is a place where I consider compromise. But I say, if they're going to say you can't run the 10 commandments on your state house, and they overread this, then I'm going to embrace that overreading for when they are actually violating the spirit of that amendment, which is I can't go to mass on Sunday. I cannot go to mass on Sunday. And I think it was one part of that, very important, is that these are desperate times. And we would not be so desperate, so stressed out, so desperate for what I think the real purpose of all of this is, which is these bailouts, this excessive spending, bankrupting our country, that we wouldn't be so desperate if we had something to turn to like God. And I also think that what's coming, and I'm going to hat tip my friend A, I'm just going to give him his first initially super private. My friend A pointed out, and it's absolutely, I think he's right. And sadly, I don't even want to say it, but that this pandemic will have an corollary pandemic of suicide. And I think part of that is this disconnecting us from our ability to get solace in the Lord. And it says freedom of speech, the press, assembly, and petition. Speech, press, assembly, and petition. They are clearly keeping us from communicating openly about this stuff. In England, for example, and I think you're going to see it here, they're going to make it a crime to come out against vaccines. They are suppressing speech, negative speech, at least shadow banning, stuff like that. They, in some of their scenarios, the Rockefeller Foundation scenario, the World Economic Forum, Bill Gates scenario, they talk about how anti-government protests have been based on misinformation, have been interfering. These are in the scenarios, Event 201 or Lockstep. They have been interfering with the government's ability to respond to the disease, and therefore social media should be suppressed, maybe even to the point where people get arrested, and regular media too. And then that in turn, eventually, according to the Lockstep scenario from the Rockefeller Foundation, might also lead to the suppression of political speech, because things are getting too tense. You're getting too much civil unrest. But for me, the most important problems the main reason they're suppressing the First Amendment is that they are passing laws in Congress that will bankrupt this country. The American era is over. The way the UK sunset and the US rose in World War I, we are sunsetting and China is rising. And it's because, like what MacArthur said to JFK, you want to destroy this country, you destroy its economy. And that is what Congress is doing right now. And we don't have the right to assemble on their lawn and make a stink about it, or even go door to door and get petitions signed. Those are in direct conflicts with the First Amendment, and there's a reason for it. And it's so we can't come out en masse about these laws. I'm finished. How many minutes was that? Weren't we supposed to do 3 minutes?
Ladies and gentlemen, join us next week. No, I'm just kidding. We're good. No, we got plenty 45 minutes. Yeah, we got plenty of time.
I think those are interesting answers to the question.
I agree. A couple quick things. And, my job is to throw meat into the lion's den, and your job is to consume the meat there. So we got plenty of time. But when you brought up the assembly and the house of worship, two things. I saw some churches that opened, I at least know of one that opened and had to close because all of a sudden a few of the folks got COVID. They didn't use some common sense. But the second thing is, if I'm not mistaken, didn't Trump come out and say either the states can do it or I'll override the states?
I don't know.
I think you
just
did that
know
in a
that
press
I'm not going
conference.
to church. I'm
Well,
not going to church, and that's against the constitution. That would be considered unconstitutional. If I'm in California right now,
right.
if the state of California wanted to put the 10 Commandments on the front lawn in Sacramento, they would not be allowed to do it. The feds would say they couldn't do it, and my church is closed and it's not opening because of orders. They said we would open, but we are under orders not to open. And this so-called pandemic, the total numbers of deaths in the United States during this pandemic period, the past 16 weeks, is not higher than last year's death total for those 16 weeks. So,
Well, a lot
so
of people would say that a lot of that's because we've not been out driving cars and people haven't
okay,
gone
but
to the
what about all the
doctor about
people who
cancer.
aren't getting? But I mean, that may be completely offset by people who aren't getting the help that they need. And all I'm saying is, okay, but if that's the number, if just staying home saves 80,000 lives or 100,000 lives, then why don't we just stay home
But
all the time?
I,
Do you
well, I
understand
guess,
what I'm saying?
yeah, oh, I agree. And I
That if
agree.
that church will always spread germs. You always get germs
But
at church.
I guess-
People always get a bad cold at church, and we never close it. We are biological organisms with fundamental law that arose under these circumstances.
Because, though, of the situation that the decision makers have made, we talked about this. It's not just this pandemic. So we can take that out and insert whatever topic, because they created a world where we don't trust. We don't trust the data. We don't trust this spokesman. This week masks are good. This week masks are bad. This week contact. If you touch a surface, it can last hours. You know what? It's not that. You can't get it that much if you touch a surface. And now we got to argue amongst each other. I'm mad at my neighbor because they aren't wearing a mask. I think you look stupid because you do wear a mask. I'm free. You're not. All this chaos. And so really the truth, I'm sure, is stuck in there and like little grains of sand. But we just, we the people, just don't know. No, you had 6 minutes. No, go ahead. I'm just kidding.
Here's the thing. We have a representative government with foundational laws and highly limited delegation of powers to our government. You cannot have a representational government to govern things that the people cannot understand. So that's why you can't have an empire. You can't have a foreign policy that you say, well, we have to trust the experts. Then it is not within the purview of the American experiment, because they cannot represent us if we cannot understand what we're empowering them to do. And if we cannot understand it, then not only is
it shouldn't be passed.
it's not within the purview of the laws of the country. But the reason it isn't is that you cannot have a representative government if people don't understand how to direct their representatives and trust the power, trust the plan.
But there's no trust. Work. There's no trust anymore. We've lost
but it's
trust.
not right to trust. The founders said you cannot trust. That's why we're limiting this to what you can verify.
Okay, but here's two things. And because I want to say, I think what you said a minute ago about how you can't go door to door and they're limiting how we can congregate, whether it's for religious purposes or to boycott or, protest. I think we're going to get a round two of all this. I think there's going to be another thing coming down the road. If it's not this, it'll be something else. This was a kind of a dress rehearsal type
that's
thing.
Definitely going to be around two.
Yeah, but you just said representative government, the trust.
Sorry.
Part. I understand that we're not supposed to trust, but you said verify. But here's the problem, even with that nowadays. There is such an effort, and I don't know who they are, but where do you go to get verification? Because here's why. And I'm not saying for Monica Perez. I'm just it's more of a rhetorical question. It's more of a rhetorical question, because I can promise you right now, if we did a live event, say we want a tennis match of articles and studies and research and things that prove your point, we could get lobbying of the articles. So where do you go to verify stuff?
I have the answers for you.
Where? Let's go.
The way the majority of government intel is open source. And even when it isn't, even when it's human intelligence, what they use is two ways to verify. You can have evidence, but most of it does not have evidence. Most of it comes from the plausibility of the story and the credibility of the source. And how you learn that stuff, first of all, you have to know how to think critically, and you have to have some experience in analyzing these things. And you also have to understand your source. Why would they have credibility? What are their self-interests? Do you have experience with that person? And I have, over the years, really developed what I call truth dar. So I get that applies to both plausibility and credibility. And I actually have sources. And so when I listen to them, like The Infectious Myth is a podcast I listen to, and he always puts his whole script up. He puts all the articles, the studies, peer-reviewed studies. You can do the research. And if you can't verify it, then you cannot accept it.
Okay. Yes, I agree with that. For the masses, though, who do not have the time, and I know,
of course, and that's why you have limited government. That's why you have limited government. And you know what? If we're not going to have limited government, that's fine. But give me a monarchy.
But we have to
call it a democracy. I'd rather have a monarchy.
But we have to have the conversation based on where we're at. And for the most people, they don't have the access to the resources. And here's the sources they did trust, or they grew up trusting: CBS, ABC, CNN, Fox.
Who doesn't have access? They're saying internet is now required.
No, I get that. What I'm saying is, when I say access, if I go on right now, when I want to verify a source, there's a war on sources, not just truth. Because right now, just like with human beings, all I have to do is find out one bad thing about Monica, and I can paint Monica in a bad light.
Yes, that's an effort that they're doing on purpose. That authority, they're saying the only way to check a source is authority.
But if I'm a single mom with two kids, or I'm a 75-year-old that's growing up a certain way, and all of a sudden, I don't have I can go to the internet and I'm bombarded with 3.2 million Google sources as soon as I type in something. And where do I go to verify it?
Why do you need to verify it?
Well, but you just said you got to verify.
Yeah, no, I'll answer. I think I already answered your question.
You did.
I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
So you're saying some people can't figure it out or verify it or whatever, and I'm asking you. I'm just Socratic.
Oh no, I get it.
Using a little Socratic here.
Yeah.
Why do they need to? You tell me why they need to verify the information.
Based off if we're gonna have good opinions and we're gonna make good decisions, and based off what Monica said, to verify and plausibility and verify. Well, how do I verify if I'm Clint Powell? I don't have Monica's resource. I don't have Monica's education, and I trust Google. And I want to go to Google and wait a minute, hold on a second. Clint says, go trust these 3 sources and give those a shot. So I Google those 3 sources, and they say this. But then I see all these negative reviews and all these people that are.
But why do you want to know? Do you want to know because you want to live your life, or do you want to know because you want to empower government to do certain things? Is it for your voting or for your life?
Yeah, for voting. I think it's for
voting.
Well, I think it's to know what I'm doing. I mean, here's why. If Clint's going to have an opinion, this happens to me all the time, probably not as much to you because you do this work up front. I'll say something and somebody goes, da, 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 da. And I go, I didn't think of it that way. I need to go do some more research. Then I go online to do some more research. And I'm covered with research.
Do you have any trusted source, Clint? One single source. That's great. That's a good place to start. And you know why? Why do you trust me?
And Eric, I've got friends.
I know you do. But I'm just asking. Let's just keep it simple. Yeah. Why do you trust what I say?
Because you don't agree with both sides. Because you say things against either way. You don't seem to have a spin.
I've thought through the issues, and I have made my own conclusions based on the research. I make it all very clear what I'm talking about, and you have learned that that's true about me, and that's that.
Right.
So if I haven't, then you shouldn't. Then you have to dig in a little more.
I also want to make sure that everybody understands: just because you have a source that you verify, that you trust, you like, all that, doesn't mean you have to agree with them.
No, or even believe their research is. You can keep going, but the one thing is, voting should not depend on this, because the government should not have the power to do things that rely on certain facts. The facts are established. We've established what the government can do,
but then every person has their own filter of life experiences, how they were raised.
I know, but why does their vote have enough power to bring that in? The government needs to be limited so that a different and that's why the states and the regions and the localities, it's the Catholic concept of subsidiarity. The smaller the decision-making unit can be, the smaller it should be. Anything that can be made at the individual level should be. And then only then do you go to the family, to the church, to the community, to the city, to the state, to the feds. I mean, that's how it works.
Well, and we've talked about this. That's the most effective way. They torture
the argument.
That's the most effective way, too. And
it's the only just way.
Well, I think it was the last podcast we did, or 2 or 3 ago. where it used to be, that when we talk about neighborhoods,
yes, the neighborhoods.
it used to be the neighborhoods took care of the neighbors and the churches took care of the neighborhoods. And then you had your city government or your counties, and everybody kind of knew everybody and chipped in. And that's how it worked. I actually have a buddy that just entered the mayoral race here in our fair city. And he is,
shout out.
Well, it's Tim Kelly, and he is a great guy. But here's what he did on his staff because he's probably he's right in the middle. But on his staff, he has a well-known conservative as one of his go-to people and a well-known Democrat as his go-to person. And he said, because local politics shouldn't be about being a blue or red, it should be about being local. It shouldn't be about being a Democrat or Republican. It should be doing things that are based off what's best for the local economy and the local people.
Yes, I will cautiously support that because it's a little easier to control, but it's really not that easy to control. These guys get in, and there's a local gal in Atlanta, Catherine Bernard, who runs for stuff, but she would never. But somebody just walked by, so she would never. She would never. Oh my gosh, I even have dogs running around. Okay, so she wouldn't play the game, and at first she was young and naive and wouldn't play the game, and then she was marked for life. And when she tried to run just for small local office, they did things like, or whatever, I don't know who they are, but her office got broken into. She was targeted for getting prepped for a TV interview on the dime of, or some event on the dime of her campaign, which was common practice. So she was targeted on the local level, and things like, I don't know about in her case, but I know that realtors associations, contractors, stuff like that can absolutely dig in at the local level. And if you won't respond to them, you're probably not going to get reelected. So I'd be interested to know more about your friend's actual experience on the ground as it develops.
He is a huge community leader. He owns 3 or 4 businesses that do business around the United States. So he's very well connected, really thought-provoking guy. I'd love to get him on with you at some point. But sure. A buddy of mine just private messaged me because he's a big time insurance claim adjuster. Yeah. And did you just say no to me?
Yeah. Franny wanted to know if that was the Tim Kelly of Our Interesting Times, and there's no chance. Tim Kelly lives near DC.
But anyway, he just messaged me. He goes, I cannot, he's listening, but he can't come and participate.
Oh,
he goes, I cannot wait to ping pong back and forth with you when I get a chance to watch this in real time.
This is a different person or the same person?
No, it's a buddy of mine. I've got buddies that are ready to get in. It's going to be fun.
All right. I'll post it on YouTube and we can have a little comment discussion on my YouTube channel. Yeah, please.
Eric Buchanan is dying to do a podcast with you. He is an attorney that goes around, but I think you and him would agree on about 70%.
This 30%. Hour is your hour, Clint. You can have whatever you can do with me what you will.
That's very sweet.
Franny also wanted to make the point that James Corbett, who I've mentioned to you before, I say his research is unassailable.
Okay. I just put it up in the screen there.
But learn for yourself, because for the first 3 years I listened to him, I thought, maybe he's controlled opposition. I don't know. And now I know.
What's up, Shannon Brown? Thanks for joining us,
Shannon.
buddy. He's a really well-known business owner around here. So anyway, all right. So I've screenshotted some Twitter pictures.
Okay.
Can we go through your Twitter account for the past 3 or 4 days? This is my the fun time. Now I just throw stuff out there, and I get to play devil's advocate. I may not agree with what I say. I don't even know. So I'm looking at this one.
Wow, you do have a problem trusting sources. You don't even know. You don't even agree with what you say.
So is murder bad? I don't know. Is murder bad?
I don't even know if I agree with me. That's what you just said.
I think I'm a liar, to be honest with you. Everybody's here for you anyway. They don't really care about me.
No way. You're the guy who draws the Facebook crowd.
Monica Perez, here we go. This stuff never stops. More universal vaccine planning before COVID this September of 2019. And you gave us sources at Off Guardian O. So you were talking about
I think that, this is a memory test. And I did tell you that I have one lobe tied behind my brain right now. So I believe that was a September 2019 EU document. Is that correct?
Yep.
Where they had 3 they have 3 agenda items on that. I actually put the PDF up. People had a hard time opening it. I could open it, but that's part of the game.
Yeah.
And I think there's maybe 10 or 12 agenda items they have there. But I remember I actually had written it down for my show yesterday that there were 3 kind of main points in that article of what they were up to. One was they were going to spend the next 2 years, so until 2021, researching the best way to approach these things. And in 2022, they were going to offer up a proposal, but it included the feasibility of developing a common vaccination card or passport for all EU citizens. So that to travel, you would have to not only prove your identity like we have to now,
but have you been updated?
Prove that you've been vaccinated, and vaccines can be really dangerous. I would not put one of those vaccines in my body.
Well, and
so especially a coronavirus vaccine, because it can end up with immune enhancement, which is really dangerous.
Not only that, if they come out with an a vaccine here in the next few months, which they said they're rushing it, I'm going to let other people take that one first.
Well, this is the Event 201 thing, which was the Bill Gates from October. They said a main recurring theme there was to get around liability and regulatory barriers and consequences. So, and they're talking about that now. I am such a fan of liability. Everyone should be liable. That way you don't have to have, but let me just tell you the other 2 things.
Yeah, please.
They want to also, funny they should say this, I forgot this was one of the things, overcome the legal and technical barriers impeding the interoperability of national immunization information systems. So one big thing about healthcare, about universal healthcare, about vaccinations, a lot of it is just about the information. So contact tracing really doesn't have much to do with the microbe. We've all been in contact with this microbe or equally dangerous microbes. I mean, it makes no sense. Who cares? But they can tell who you're talking to, which goes against the 4th Amendment, because then you can't conspire even in person if the phone's in your pocket. And if your phone's not in your pocket, they're going to want to know why. So it's a lot about information. That's what this is about. And then it also said to develop comprehensive electronic immunization info systems to monitor all the different programs. So I think I read those out of order, but they want to monitor all the immunization systems. Then they want to coordinate those on the international level. And this folds in with something that happened at this recent health symposium, worldwide health symposium, where the South Korean guy said he wanted the World Health Organization to have augmented regulations about gathering health data and to have the legal force, binding legal force, to be able to go into a country without that country's permission and confiscate health data. So this goes along with that. I mean, that is clearly the agenda. I could probably cite 3 or 4 other resources in their own words. So here's a way for your verifiable facts. If it's in their own words, there's no dispute that that's what they're trying to do. I mean,
I think they're creating.
Nobody can argue with me.
I think they're creating a lot of like these linear things that eventually they can just like balloons, and eventually they can just reach over and grab them all. And you know what I'm saying? And twist them. And that, okay, so we got vaccines, you got passports, we got cell phones, we're, tracing, contact tracing with this. All your money's coming through us. And then they just grab it and with one big swoop, and now they control all the balloons. They control all those. And
you can't function economically without their permission because
they're in here.
And that's true. That's going to be true about the vaccines. These are going to just be permissions to function economically.
This is my buddy Eric. This is him. He responded.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it would be fun.
He's agrees. A great guy. Oh, you agree with me almost entirely, but there are a lot of questions and different views. I'm always open to an intelligent discussion. And to tell you the truth, I hate to say this part, I have virtually no hope that we are going to restore liberty or the Bill of Rights or the Constitution within this system. I think it's over. So I don't care if people believe me, but I do like to get people thinking and have a conversation.
And you and Eric,
I think that the answer at this point is to try to get enough land that can grow enough food for you and maybe 150 other people. That's why I want Deirdre's got a her family has a dairy farm somewhere. I need that address, Deirdre. Text it to me.
Well, my family has
out there.
I've got a family member that's got about 300 or 400 acres, so we can.
We were talking about that, and I have another friend who's got a ranch.
All right. So one of your things off Twitter, I'm going to deviate from the screenshots and go to something I wrote down. Defining a new economic paradigm. Do you remember what that one was about?
Yes, defining a new economic paradigm. Oh, that was something. It was a response to a person sent out a tweet, a widely shared tweet. It was a really strange website. It was called the United Nations New World Order. And it was so shocking. It just didn't even look real. And the little time I spent trying to figure out if it was real or not, I found that document. So I offered that up to her as a way to help verify if her website was true or not. I haven't read that, but that PDF is like 165 pages of the UN wanting to establish a new economic paradigm by 2030. And part of it, this is so interesting. It's way super deep right now, but part of it is this 2050, 10 billion happy 2050, something like that is part of this initiative. So I guess 10 billion people is what they expect by 2050. Right. And they want to make sure they're happy. Okay. So I'm like piecing this together in real time. So bear with me.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just explaining to somebody that the 20th century dialectic was communism versus fascism. So, the thesis, antithesis, synthesis thing. Yeah. It's like the Hegelian dialectic. So the thesis was, maybe it was capitalism, and the antithesis was socialism, because communism and fascism were both forms of socialism.
Right.
And then we all had big war, whatever, and it synthesized to social democracy. So
good guys versus bad guys.
Yeah, and think about it. It had nothing to do with that, really, because Russia is our enemy, and they were our ally then, and Germany and Japan are our allies now, because they were absorbed. Like, that's the synthesis was very effective. So I was thinking, what's the 21st century dialectic? And the only thing I could see when I started thinking about this question maybe 10 years ago was Christianity, or the Judeo-Christian side against Islam. And I thought, but what would the desired synthesis be? What is the synthesis? And I thought, well, the only synthesis could be that they want to legislate morality. They want a universal moral system to be incorporated into the system. And they've tried atheism before, but it doesn't work. People can't live with it. It's like the Matrix. It's like, you can't have a world like that. People won't accept it. So if they legislate it, and I feel like psychology, happiness, spirituality, yoga, so all that stuff is part of that. So I'll have to research that a little bit more. Or anybody else can if they want. But this is how you see what's coming. And this is how you put stuff in context, these agenda items. It's not just one-off. Should we let them do this? It's like, what are they really up to? Because they don't care about you.
When you say they, who's they?
Well, I can, in that case, Nancy Pelosi. Like, why are they making?
I just wanted you to say a liberal's name. I just wanted you to say a liberal's name. That's okay.
Well, she happens to be the one, but it wouldn't necessarily. Trump's going to sign it, so there.
Stop. Just stop right now. Hey,
so
you also
your ethical glass ceiling, sweetie.
All right, next screenshot. Putin warns of potential second wave of COVID-19 infections in the fall, tells the Russian health ministry to prepare.
Yes. So
why was that important enough for you to put that up?
Yeah, it is. It always is. Anything that I originate, it's usually something that I have an original thought about. And in that case, it's that 9/11, ISIS, Edward Snowden, these are all our official narratives on those things are not true. You don't have to believe me. I don't care. So you can do your own research. So, but Putin goes along with it, even though he seems to be genuinely at odds with us at one level of the chessboard. So he doesn't out those things because they are useful to him. He has a population to control also. So I can see you. Did you see that? Somebody crawled by. Yeah. So that's pretty funny.
I love
so
live.
Anyway, it's like awesome. Galaxy Quest, where the guy's like trying to save the universe, this kid.
Yeah.
And then the mother keeps knocking on the door. You need to take the garbage out right now, young man, or I'm disconnecting your internet. And he's just like, okay.
So funny.
So that's a little pop in. He's humorous. So wait, everybody. This is live TV, people. Anyway.
Very professional.
Oh my gosh. Yes, right. So
I just want you to know that no one cares more about being professional than Monica. And this right now, she is like, go ahead. You do.
See, you're messing with me. Okay. So what Putin's doing is maybe it's wrong of me to like have my thing facing the hallway. There you go. Whatever. Okay, listen. So my point is that'll give people time to digest all the other fast talking New Yorker stuff I throw at you. So for Putin to embrace something like this, Russia has a very low rate of coronavirus cases. They have, I think, a higher rate than we do of deaths. I don't know, but I question if most of the deaths, if not all of them, are a result of changed protocols over normal kind of pneumonias and stuff. But in any case, he's saying that he expects the second wave in October and November. And no matter, he part of his appeal is that he's wise and honest. So if this thing is a game and they're messing with us and they have a plan, regardless of whether the virus is real or not, they are unrolling the response for their own purposes, agenda purposes. He's not guessing, I don't think, and I don't think he would say it unless it's exactly what's going to happen. And I believe that that will be the October surprise surrounding our elections, and that we probably will have some kind of real, I don't know, martial law or some real problem around the election.
You know what's really weird about that is a year and a half, 2 years ago, I was reading these conspiracy theory things that there was going to be martial law around the next elections because no one was accepting the results in the last election, blah, blah, blah. And now we're slowly getting to that point. And you put your hand up.
They've been doing that. Yes. Thank you.
Yes, Monica. Yes.
They have been doing that for 20 years, I'll tell you. And they're actually, Binkley, we do every once in a while, we do not our daily show, but we do a propaganda report proper, which is an hour and a half deep dive. And he pulls clips from, in this case, I think it was the U.S. Army War College. Sometimes it's Brookings Institution, sometimes Council of Foreign Relations. And just a few months ago, before the Corona times, they said, probably because of Russian interference or something, they would set up a tripwire that would alert the public to the dangers of Russia or something. And that the tripwire would be around the 2020 election. And I believe they offered up that a martial law might ensue at that time. But I've been saying for years, ever since 2020, every single solitary election has been put up as in dispute because democracy kind of is supposed to get us to accept, and they want us not to. So
no one accepts it now. No.
So
one.
the 2020, 2000 was the hanging Chad. 2004 was the Diebold machines in Ohio. 2008 was the Kenyan birth certificate. 2012 was the Kenyan birth certificate. 2016 was Russian interference, and if it had been Hillary, it would have been illegal voting, and if it had been Ted Cruz, it would have been Canadian citizenship. A requirement is that you usher in a constitutional crisis or some other dispute. So if they have martial law, if they have COVID voting, if they have mail-in votes, you already see Michelle Obama and Stacey Abrams coming together or coming from different angles about the illegitimacy of the 2020 election in advance.
Did you hear? There's a funny little meme I saw, or maybe on that Babylon, that is like a sarcasm. It's a parody website. It's hilarious, but it goes, if Stacey Abrams is selected as the VP, she's agreed to step down as the governor of Georgia.
Yeah, she's the imaginary governor of Georgia.
Hey, listen,
so ridiculous.
One thing I looked up, and then I got to get back to the Twitter feeds because I want to make sure we get all this in. I tried to find the real deaths of the flu, just influenza this year. I wanted to see what.
I'll tell you.
Well,
yeah, did you find it?
I found so many, but here's the range between 25,000 and 65,000 deaths. And I could never find anything that was not more of an estimate. So if you've got a number, I'd love to know.
Just tell you what the CDC said.
That's what I thought I was.
I have the CDC numbers.
It's okay.
Okay, sorry. So it's called the provisional death toll. It's a CDC thing, and it was updated May 22nd. And you want to know influenza deaths, 6,253.
Just for the month or for the whole season?
For the year to date.
I wonder what it was year to date this day last year.
Yeah, I have heard that you can find that data here. I don't see it, but they say there were 73,639 COVID deaths, but deaths from all causes was almost 1 million, which is, and this is, that wasn't year to date. That's 16 weeks. It's starting February 1st. So you would have to probably increase that number by 25% probably, or maybe 30%. So I would say it's probably 8,000.
But see, there ought to be a place just to get a number.
No, you can, but I can't, you just threw that at me, but I'm giving you a dead on balls accurate number for 16 The
Was that my
last
cousin
16
Vinny?
weeks.
That's my cousin
Yeah.
Vinny. I think is that where you just pulled that out of there?
Yes.
My cousin Vinny. That's awesome.
What the heck? She is wearing a bathing suit under that.
Are you sure Saturdays at 3 are good?
I told them I was podcasting. I forgot to tell them it was video.
That's okay. All right, let's do this one real quick. Let's go back to Twitter. You said the WHO collaboration, media coverage, suicide during the lockdown. That's all I wrote down.
I'm very worried about this.
What does that mean?
The World Health Organization, it's not under their name there, but when I think you'll have to look into the organization that actually put that data out. It was billed as being a World Health Organization collaboration, and I just didn't have time to verify it, but I think it is. They put out a guidelines about how to minimize the reporting of suicide during the corona times, probably because if there is a big spike in that, it will highlight the fact that for all the heartache they caused with their policies, it was not worth it compared to the COVID deaths. But what I actually think is going to happen is there will be, after the fact, where there's no going back, they always make lemonade out of the stuff that they create. So they may have, this was my friend of the show, he gave me the tip on this concept that there would be a suicide pandemic in the wake of the COVID pandemic.
I like that.
I don't like it. And I just, for the record, I in general do not approve of or do not prefer that they report on suicides, because it's been demonstrated that suicide reporting, raising awareness to suicide, actually increases it.
Yeah.
So I don't even like to talk about it.
Well, then we won't talk about it. I just was reading your Twitter feed. I'm sorry.
I just want people to be aware, because you can, as Corbett says, inoculate people with the truth. So when they see it coming, remember, be on your guard that kind of propaganda is very dangerous, and don't talk to your kids about it. Just suppressing is good. Well,
that's why I said when I said I like that, I didn't like the top. I mean, I like the fact we're talking about it, because I think that's important to get that out there. I don't mind talking about stuff like that. But I understand your point. I also think it's important for people to know. That's why I say little things that like be kind. And I've said this a bunch, because no matter what's going on in the world, a death is a serious thing, no matter what it's from, who it is, or why.
Totally. No,
and being kind is kind of free. Well, but when you start judging people that's what I'm talking about with neighbors. When I start really judging people because of things that they may believe that are different from mine, and I don't do it in an act of we're all in this, and there's a sense of kindness to it, it really can push people. And I don't think people understand how much they can push it.
For people who used to listen to my WSB show, I had callers. I mean, Flat Earth Mark. I loved Flat Earth Mark. I loved him. I don't think the earth is flat, but I would not mock him or judge him. He wasn't calling about the flat earth. He was calling about other stuff that was good. So I learned through that interaction, and that I don't think there's 60 million evil people, and the Democrats think there's 60 million evil Republican voters. Republicans think there's 60 million evil Democrat voters. I think people are probably wired differently. They have different experiences. I don't have a high tolerance for people who refuse to think hard. That I don't. I mean, you have a moral obligation to be honest with yourself.
I think real evil people blend in with the non-evil people that they agree with. I think the real evil people are the ones that are they put on the sheep's outfit and go amongst them. And there's evil out there. And that's what I tell my kids. You've got to discern. You got to have a discerning spirit.
They rise to power.
This is a good question. Is investigative reporting dead, or has it gone underground? And you froze up. Are you still there?
I think it's there. I think it's underground. I mean, investigative reporting is kind of hard, and I think that's the stuff that's quite dangerous, to be honest with you. I think that open source reporting, where you get stuff off the internet and you share it and you consolidate it, analyze it, I think you're kind of safe there. But it seems to me that people who kind of disappear are the ones who have firsthand information, and
that no one else that can't be verified.
I think
they are the source. The
It's
source
not
was
just
gone.
dead; it's killed. It's stamped out. If it tries to resurge, it gets spoken to.
Hey, so now that we're changing topics real quick. So those who
But
are
his
listening,
other comment is very important.
oh
Eric's
yeah,
comment above
yeah.
that.
To my
I've been saying
point,
that since the beginning.
to Clint's point, why are the comparative numbers hard to find? We were talking about the CDC and the flu numbers, and I know the numbers are on there, but literally, I didn't spend a lot of time.
I did spend a lot of time,
But
and
I
I couldn't
spent
find
10
it.
minutes, and I couldn't find what I wanted.
I've heard that number is there, but I have spent more than 10 minutes on that site alone, and I can't find it. Which I'm not saying it's not there, but that's a problem. And
I think it's on purpose.
If this were scientifically valid, all I've ever wanted from the beginning is apples to apples numbers that can be verified and the cost benefit analysis of their policy. Their policies are unconstitutional, in my opinion, from top to bottom. But in any case, I'll play your game. You want me to be all science? Give me the science. You want to be all pragmatic? Tell me what the connection is. Not you. I'm not saying you.
No, we just got Monica doing this now. I like it.
Not air quotes.
Pragmatic. Hey, a tweet, because we're going to keep it moving along. Do you have time for about another 4 tweets? Are we good?
Well, we started so late that let's give it a whole.
We'll get it all in.
But we can. Let's do 15 more minutes.
I'm in quarantine, so I can. I'm not going anywhere. In a pandemic, no one wants to touch money. Cash is becoming taboo.
Yeah, go ahead, go Caroline.
Cash is becoming taboo.
Naked. Sorry,
it's okay. Cash is
sorry.
dirty.
I'm sorry. I'm not good at distractions. So cash is dirty, and let me think for a second.
Let's see. I'll go back and read it again.
No, I think what they want, I know what it is. They're saying that they are using this as they have many agenda items that they can accomplish with this pandemic. And one of them, they've been wanting to go cashless for a long time. There's an IMF blog post that I might have mentioned last time. I can't remember, where they talked about why they want to have a digital Fed currency, and it's so you can have negative interest rates, which negative interest rates kind of just get people to take their money out of the bank. But if there's no cash, that's why there's a run on physical gold, not the ETF electronic gold, but physical gold is kind of hard to get. It used to be illegal to own it because they want to control that stuff, which is terrible.
The rest of the comment was why cash has become the new typhoid Mary. In other words, you touch cash, you get sick. Yeah, you touch cash, you're getting sick. It's got the germs on it, and
even typhoid Mary, I believe, she didn't really spread typhoid. Poor thing.
Let's see here. Michigan court rules governor has authority to extend state of emergency.
Yes. Well, because those dams broke in Dow Chemical headquarters backyard, which I waited for it. I was like, really? An unprecedented event. This has never happened before. And I wonder, I have absolutely no evidence for this, but I'm keeping my eyes on the story because that was a Superfund site that has been under cleanup for decades, and it's supposed to be finished in 2021. And I just wonder if a flood comes along, that would sure clean it up, and you wouldn't be held responsible for the chemicals will be gone. So I smell a little bit of a rat with that one, but I did want to talk about that Biden thing that you suggested we talk about.
I've got 3 or 4. Can we? Okay. So,
do it.
No.
Go. If you prefer the tweets, go for it. I got all the time in the world.
No. I'm going to come back to Biden, but one thing, and I want to put up some stuff that Eric Buchanan has and my buddy Shannon Brown, but I want to say this real quick.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something almost 45 minutes ago, because I asked, we're a big believer in the state rights, but Trump came out, and I'm a church going guy. We were talking about churches. When Trump came out, and I'm reading the headlines from the New York Times, I watched the press conference when he came out and said, it's time for people to go back to church so states can either let them go back and consider them essential, or we will override the states. And everybody that I know was like, yes, finally. And I kept thinking, first thing I thought of because of our conversations is that the federal government overstepping their bounds?
By what mechanism would he do that?
I don't have a clue. That's why I was asking you.
I think
you're the smart one.
Yeah, I think the feds really. Here's the reason why I kind of don't think the 14th Amendment incorporates the Bill of Rights into state law, although it's been adjudicated as such, and maybe I accept it. I don't know. I got to think about it some more, maybe. But I always go back to this. how does the Fed, why do states obey Congress? Why do you need the Supreme Court to decide? No. Why do you need the Supreme Court to decide? Well, yes, that's true. That is absolutely true. But before that, before there was an income tax, before there was that, why do you need the Supreme Court to decide if congressional law is constitutional or not? Why don't the states just ignore it if it's unconstitutional? And it's because the feds will invade. And they've done that before. And then after they did that, when they had invaded and just killed everybody, they still were not getting the compliance they wanted. So after the Civil War, the so-called Civil War, they established the Department of Justice to enforce federal law on states that would not comply. And that's why the Supreme Court has all this power that it really should not have. And that's what keeps the two-party system intact, because everybody just wants that. So what is he going to do? He's going to send feds in?
Okay.
What is he going to do? Or is he going to literally, I'm just saying, like, is he going to literally send in soldiers to fight with the police in the states? So you have to think about it. There's no mechanism for enforcement. A law is not valid.
See, I use this as a platform to drive people to your podcast, The Prop Report, during the week anyway. So we don't have to fix all the problems. I'm going to come back to the Biden
We don't
thing.
get into, the Prop Report doesn't get into this depth. It's of ideology. It's headlines, but it's good.
Well, here's what we're going to do, though. We've got about 5 or 6 comments. Can I throw them up on the screen and you hit them real quick?
Sure.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I got it.
And then we'll go back to tweets. There we go.
Cheryl Atkinson still does some good reporting, in my opinion, but I think she has a half-hour show on Sunday mornings now. That's it. John Stossel's good, too. Is John Stossel even still around? Didn't Kennedy push him out? I think is he still around?
I thought he was.
Was he? During the pandemic, I have been using cash more than in a long time.
Yeah, this is my buddy Shannon Brown. Yeah. I've been using a little cash.
Yeah. Well, they want it to go away because of the negative interest rates. If it is all not so much of a hidden agenda anymore. Not hidden, yes. Joe Biden coronavirus economic message. Biden says he wants to fundamentally change the social contract and the current virus emergency. Yeah. Current virus provides that opportunity. No, I do not think it's about a virus. I don't think it ever was. What I really think it's about is that we were poised for the debt collapse that kicking the can from 2008 was made inevitable, and they wanted cover. They didn't want to have to admit that the Fed and Bernanke and all their crap, it was a disaster and doesn't work, and all this so-called growth and overconsumption and everything is unsustainable because of the Fed, not because of climate change.
They just another spackle, hole in the wall. They just cover it up with stuff. Another emergency. Never let a good tragedy go to waste.
No, they created it for this reason.
Yep. Shannon Brown also said, I wanted to have cash on hand if for some reason the bank's closed because he didn't know.
Yes.
And Franny said, who would have thought having cash would have been sort of bucking the system? No pun intended. It was a nice pun.
Cute. Nice.
Here we go. There's one you can.
Don't the Fed sort of blackmail you with withholding federal funds and stuff like that for the states to comply with that? Yes. Like the highway funds were contingent on making the drinking age 21, which is completely unconstitutional in my opinion.
But it's the same way we've had this conversation about education. Any program,
the immigration
when the government gets their tentacles into it, the federal government, they go, okay, yeah, we'll help. Yeah. Now, if we're going to keep giving you this money, you've got to do A, B, and C.
Yeah, didn't Trump say that about immigration?
I don't know.
Sanctuary cities. Yes, he definitely did. He said,
I don't think he did.
He said, we're not giving you any more money if you're. What? Can you not? Wait, my headphone. I don't think. Monica, are you talking?
They had dust in them. I don't know what you're talking about.
Got it. Keep moving.
Nothing to see here.
Yeah.
Have you had fun so far?
I really have fun. Yeah.
I hope so. All right. Let's get. We
should do it a little later sometime so we can have a cocktail.
The good thing is I'm not quarantined with anybody. I have a cocktail right now.
Well, but here's the problem. You make me think, so I can't have a cocktail.
Hey, you wanted to talk about Biden? Now, wait, real quick. Wait, hold on. Which one? Do you want to talk about the Biden that said you're not black if you don't vote for me?
No, I don't care.
You want to talk about? Oh, see, that's the stuff people care about.
I know I do count on you for keeping my feet on the ground
And
there.
believe all women, believe women unless they're against our guy. Then we don't believe women. Kavanaugh right now has got to be so mad going.
He's so happy. He's on the Supreme Court. Nobody even talked about his Vince Foster cover up. He is so fucking happy.
But they had okay. I see what you're doing.
Definitely,
we're not going to conflate two things. Don't conflate two things. The charges against him when it came to the women that came out against him against Joe Biden has way more. That lady is way more credible. The problem with it is the overarching thing is if someone comes out with a allegation, they should have to go through the innocent till proven guilty, just like everybody else. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, whether you're a vice president or whether you're a judge. Look, if you're going to get accused, let's go find the facts and prove it out.
Of course.
But nobody does that anymore.
Okay. Just like Monica Lewinsky was trotted out by Ken Starr, one of the most corrupt people in the world, he did that to cover up Whitewater for the Clintons. So this whole thing of distract them with sex is as old as the hills. And Biden is, in my opinion, an organized crime mastermind. And he is rolling out the Alzheimer's thing. They're distracting people with the sexual harassment thing to keep the eye off the Ukraine and China scandals and all the shenanigans that pony-faced dog-faced pony soldier.
Liar. He called that young girl a dog-faced pony soldier liar, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah,
hey,
that's pretty funny.
Okay, so I'll make a prediction right now. There is, and this is why don't go bet houses on, don't go bet your life savings on what I say, because I have zero credibility. Here's how much of a percentage chance I think Joe Biden has of being the nominee.
Being the nominee?
Zero.
Wow. So who do you think it's going to be?
It's either going to be Michelle or Hillary, or Michelle or Hillary. That's what I think.
Gropey Joe, that's a good one. But can we just talk about for a second this hidden audio? Poroshenko,
yes, I heard it. Go for it.
The former Ukrainian president, who a lawmaker in Ukraine, I knew Ukraine was in the newspaper and the Wall Street Journal because they had all this like corruption talk. When our mainstream media talks about Ukraine losing the battle against corruption, that's like opposite talk. Our anti-corruption activist center over in Ukraine is a George Soros, U.S. federal government joint venture that Ukrainians have been investigating as foreign interference. So I'm not going to get into that. I used to cover it extensively. I've been on podcasts for 45 minutes just to talk about that. I talked about it on my own thing. But I will just say that they like to tell us that corruption is overtaking Ukraine again. It's because we have not been able to subdue it completely. So one of the Ukrainian lawmakers, I think, leaked a tape of Poroshenko and Biden talking about getting Shokin, the prosecutor general, fired in exchange for $1 billion loan guarantee that our taxpayers are on the hook for, by the way, in the most corrupt country in the world. But let me just tell you, that's treason. It's a criminal charge. Poroshenko might have to go on trial for treason. And that is going to be a problem for Joe Biden.
I just, again, though, so this is where I think it's good our two worlds collide. Because I hear you say this, and I combine it with the allegations from the sex charges that I'm not saying are true. And I say you're not, when he said, if you don't vote for me, you're basically not black. I take all that and I think to myself, and if you wonder why conservatives think the media is slanted against them, because all I heard was race is always the reason you don't like us. We can't talk about ideas, right? So you're a racist. No, it's not true. All I heard is believe all women until it's our guy. And then I heard quid pro quo forever with President Trump, forever. And they had a fraction of what they have on Joe Biden, and I don't hear anything. So
let me just tell you something.
I'm ready for a little bit of CNN or MSNBC, one of these folks to start pumping it out as much as they did when they had nothing on other people.
So you just said a bunch of things about Joe Biden, bunch of things. I'm serious, big wedge issues. He also has this Alzheimer's thing working. All this stuff is really, Joe Biden has a lot of stuff in the news right now. And I would say that it is all, except for the Ukraine stuff, theater to keep us distracted. So the reason that you're getting this ridiculous double standard on race, double standard on gender, double standard on this stuff. Let's talk about Joe Biden. He's blah, 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 blah. All you're doing is making noise, not you, but the mainstream media. No, they're making noise. Mm-hmm. They're just making noise to cover up the fact that this is an international billion-dollar corruption scheme. His brother was knee-deep in a corruption scheme with a Ponzi schemer bigger than Madoff.
So
Sanford is
but this is going to come out, and this is why I went back to the percentages. Biden. Here's what I think is going to happen. Round 2 of this is going to kick off in August or September. Voting things are going to start happening. You're not going to be able to have a where they come together, the delegation where they all come together and pick their the representative for him to go forward and be the president nominee. So this is, I think they're setting it up. You use the word theater, and I love it because I think they're setting all this up because right now, if any of the other candidates would get in and they're going to have debates, Trump is really good at making you look as bad as him. He's really good at that. Unless you get into the race in September or October and as a last minute because Joe Biden's unfit to run and they get to put somebody in who only has 5 or 6 weeks, where guess what? They get off the handoff to the media and bam.
Yeah, I mean, I was 100% confident, or I should say I was quite confident that Trump was going to get in because he needed to be the guy to take the fall for the economic collapse, but they could not push it out that far. So I think, so now we have this, the economic collapse is happening. I really don't know if Trump is destined to be reelected or not. What you're saying is interesting, but there is a lot of drama around it. I don't think it matters. I think the banksters are pulling the strings.
Well, we've talked about that too. I think what the question was a couple of weeks ago, somebody asked, would it have looked different? Or you may have asked, if Hillary won, would this have looked different? I said, no, it would have been just the same amount of chaos and unknowns, and we'd had different problems and different people pointing fingers at the other person, but the chaos part would have been the same. A couple more tweets. Just what they did in the Great Depression: a record high grocery prices as farmers smash eggs and dump milk.
Terrible. I don't know if the Great Depression was orchestrated panic. I think there was orchestration behind the collapse, but I don't know if they really wanted people to be that desperate to usher in socialism. Probably. But just like 2008, the powers that be have pushed down a lot of panic on us to get their bills passed. And one thing that's going to make people panic, and I actually tweeted something else about electricity, about the coal supply chain breaking. This was written a couple of years ago about what would happen if there was a pandemic. You'd have interruptions in electricity. And so I'm expecting that too. But the food shortages, the reason there are going to be food shortages and they're anticipating that and they're destroying all the supplies is because they're saying the supply chain is broken because sick workers are being told to stay home. Not sick, testing positive. And I read recently, I've got to look it up to verify, but that there was a report out of China that 80% of the positives are false. 80%. So there's no validation there. So if they're staying home,
we can't trust.
But you can read the study and see how they did it, but so if they're asymptomatic. So what does that even mean? Then what is this disease and why are they not going to work? And I'll go, I don't care. I'll go work. I'll go package some food. It's the devastation of a food shortage compared to this pandemic, which has a 0 net death,
The DOJ, another tweet from Monica Perez off of Monica Perez's Twitter feed. The DOJ elections judge who was bribed by the Democrat advisor to stuff ballot boxes for 3 voting cycles. I don't know what that all means, but that's what you put up one day ago. Do you know what that is?
That was probably an article I wanted to read, but it sounds to me like did I have an original thought or is it just the headline? That's
just the head. Well, that's what your thought was for 3 voting cycles. The headline is DOJ indicts election judges who was bribed. So they were just indicted. So you just posted that. As a poor high school,
I like to keep tabs on how voting is corrupted. And I think voting is going to be a big problem this year. So maybe I just wanted for reference. I'm sorry.
As a poor high school dropout with no connections, the SAT was my only hope. The unintended consequences are certainly foreseeable. This is based off the University of California suspends SAT and SAT requirements, which there's a huge difference. I agree that our education system has become more of a test-taking system. Me and my daughter talk about this all the time, but you still have to have ways to gauge what you've learned. And
well, the SAT does not gauge what you've learned. It gauges your aptitude. So what it's gauging is, do you have the capacity to learn? Even if you're a poor little urchin like I was, can we save you? Can we teach you something? And I dropped out of high school. I went to community college. And because of SATs, I got into Harvard as a transfer student. So they knew I had the aptitude, and I did. I ended up getting A's in the end, but I had to.
So do you agree with them doing away with the SAT and ACT?
No,
yeah, I don't either. Okay.
No, I think that those tests are objective. I understand that they can have disparate impact, and they do try to correct for that. And when you fill out your application, if you're in a group that is,
they do make adjustments for that.
They adjust for it, and then you also, the admissions boards adjust for it. So, and then you also have a problem like Thomas Sowell talks about, affirmative action, which takes really high achieving people of color and the exact same achievement across all, say, ethnicities and races would get into the same school, but they'll pluck out some people of color and put them in a school a little bit too hard for anyone at that level. And then that person who used to have a lot of self-esteem and really be able to contribute to their communities struggle. And it makes other people think less of them, and they themselves lose self-esteem. He bases all of his conclusions on evidence. So Thomas Sowell's a great resource for that stuff. And so for me, I feel like when you're taking an aptitude test, if it actually genuinely measures your ability to do the work at the place that is using it, then you have a chance of proving, even if you don't know how to take a test, even if you haven't gone to a great school, even if you weren't a great student because you waitress full time like I did. I was a great student, but I did work hard. And my father didn't even like education. He thought it was how you became a communist. So I was discouraged. I was encouraged to drop out of school. And my only hope was to say, hey, man, I got the horsepower. Give me a chance. And
I was not a great student. I was not a great student. And we only took the ACT. And so I did okay on the ACT. And then I went to college and they measure your IQ. And this one class I had as one of his exercises, he goes, I want to do an IQ test every quarter. So we took 4 IQ tests in the year to see the variance.
Wow. Yeah. Well, there are a couple of interesting, Nicole has a good comment. And
I'm going to put them up right now, but go ahead.
I believe people would not have been compliant with the lockdown if there was a Democratic president. I totally agree. And I actually invented a hashtag that applies. Hashtag, it will take a Republican. Somebody told me that about gun control. It will take a Republican.
I don't like that hashtag.
It is. It silences. Nicole, funny you should say, I actually invented an expression called the contrary law of democracy. What you hate the most can only be delivered by your own party. Because if the other party tried to deliver it, you would fight tooth and nail.
Well, that's the danger, though, in only seeking out confirmation bias. Because if I only want to hear what I like and you become my only resource, then if you change your tune all of a sudden or start feeding me food I don't like, a little bit like poison, a little bit at a time, then I start taking it because me and you are buddies. We agree. Of course. Why would I not? And next thing you know.
So you're saying I'm right about everything, Clint?
Absolutely. I'm talking to a woman. I'm absolutely saying that. What are you talking about? Stupid. Absolutely. Here we go.
Getting rid of the SAT weeds out those who may become critical thinkers. No opportunity for thinkers. Let me see if I understand that. So you're saying, yes, you're saying they didn't want me. I went to Harvard and Stanford because of standardized tests.
Right. He was actually agreeing.
Yeah, I am not what they want. You know what I mean? They did not want me. They wanted someone whose achievement was based purely on book learning.
Right. There we go. All right. Give me 10 more minutes. Give me 10 more minutes. Can you give me 10 more minutes?
Yeah, whatever you need. Whatever you need, babe.
What do you got?
As long as nobody is absolutely naked running around behind me. See, and the other thing is I'm going to put this on my YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be great.
So the world is going to see. I wonder if I can redact my daughter in a bikini.
Hey, I hate to say this, just have a shadow walk behind you. We've talked about this one, but it's been a long time. We talked about this a long time ago. The college scandal. People are going to jail now for the college scandal.
It so upsets me that Lori Loughlin pled. I mean, granted, it's only a couple of months and a relatively small fine, but I was hoping that she would get restitution for having her career ruined. I think that she was targeted and railroaded because of her religious and political beliefs. And I think that the con man who conned her told her, the FBI, it was much worse than what happened to Flynn, much worse. And they threatened her with 40 years. And my guess, and she still fought. My guess is either her lawyer, who could have taken it, just wasn't willing to go all the way, or they started threatening her consequences for her kids.
Yeah,
that's what I think probably happened. And I'm sure they made her sign something that said she wouldn't talk about it. And I mean, Tommy Chong went to jail for something he wasn't even accused of because they threatened to put his wife and son in jail for 99 years. He wasn't even accused of it. Eric
Buchanan said they're getting rid of the SAT to stop you and people like you. So,
yes.
Let's see. Let's run through some Twitter screenshots. The Senate authorizes subpoena in the Hunter Biden probe. I think you've already discussed that.
But no, that's different. And I'll just tell you real quick. The Hunter
Yeah.
Biden probe is about some Blue Star Strategies company that worked for Burisma. That is a way to not actually probe the Bidens while making it look like they will probe the Bidens. Because that's going to come out clean, has nothing to do with anything. Or it comes out dirty for them and not him, or it's a slap on the wrist for him. When they focus on the fact that he was paid by Burisma, that is not the big picture here. The big picture is that he's in bed with Whitey Bulger's uncle, nephew, with with John Kerry's stepson, with I don't know if I ever told you about this, Devin Archer, his other partner there, and then Joe Biden's brothers and his son's relationship with that arch fraudster in Connecticut. I mean, this stuff is deep. Peter Schweitzer's book was good on this, touched on it. I think sparked it all off, to be honest with you.
What do you think about Trump taking the drug that everybody says he shouldn't be taking?
I think he should get some sun, take some supplements, be healthy, drink some water. I think that the drug thing, you're on one side, you're pro the drug. You're on the other side, you're pro another drug. I just get healthy, bro. The infectious myth is a good resource, and he just did a podcast on chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, and with
is it up or down? Up or down? Should he be taking it or not?
This guy I believe he's an expert witness for people who have been damaged by hydroxychloroquine, and one of this thing called Hack Attack from a Rockefeller Foundation scenario study used as one of the potential scenarios of what might affect world events was that an anti-malarial drug that was promoted by a corrupt World Health Organization was tainted and caused a lot of damages. So
now what was this?
There's a thing, the Rockefeller Foundation put something out in 2010 where they want to predict the future so they can prepare for it, and they want to implement technology in any of the different ways that the future unfolds. So that's how they scenario things out. That's why I think Ted Cruz could have won, Trump could have won, Hillary could have won, and they were ready for all those scenarios.
They have them in place.
So they scenario stuff out, and one of the scenarios was called Lockstep, which is about this pandemic. It's almost word for word what's happening right now, and they talk about how the countries of the world are acting in lockstep, which they are. And then one of the other ones, though, that nobody's really looking at was called Hack Attack. And that had this little item in there about how one of the factors that's going to cause mistrust in government is this tainted anti-malarial drug. So it's not like they don't anticipate different things that can trigger. And then they do really high-level studies on how the psychology will unfold around that. So I consider this a trap.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. You got to give me 30 seconds only on each one of these. You ready? That's just, I'm setting the rules.
Should I get my stopwatch on?
No, I got the stop. I'm the stopwatch. Fun fact: Trump's new sparring partner, Neil Cavuto, started his career at Sesame Street. Why did you put that up there?
Because I think it's very interesting how what they want. Another guy, Stuart Varney, is like that. When they feed you your propaganda, they want it coming from Big Bird or Cookie Monster. They're just like, oh, believe me, you should take hydroxychloroquine.
You just did a Mr. Bill impression. Hey, from the
did.
BBC, we can build a real time machine.
Oh my gosh. My son, who has Down syndrome,
Yeah.
texts me constantly, and he puts every freaking text he sends me includes a picture of himself. So some of the people in the threads here probably have gotten texts from my son, and one of them was that article, and I was like, dude, way to go. So I just wanted to tweet
Give him
something,
some
and
props.
it had an amazing response. So many people started talking to me about it. It's not possible, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you know what? Talk to the kid.
Talk to him. He's the one who did it. There's an app will be able to log users who are in physical proximity for at least 5 minutes. There will be a permanent record of everyone who came in contact with on top of all digital communication. This is the health data you were talking about earlier in the show. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, is that they're going to put all that stuff in your permanent record, and they're going to tell you that it's not a permanent record, that you can get it back. But not long before this, Google and other folks were scandalized because they were not making information anonymous. They were keeping it. And then when you have the World Health Organization worldwide potentially getting legal permission to come into countries and take information without the country's permission, that kind of information is kind of dangerous for them to compile, knowing what's going to happen. It's not an unintended consequence. It's foreseeable and therefore avoidable.
The last screenshot I have for Monica Perez. Teaching workers to function in protective gear is hashtag straight outta event 201.
Yes, I did that hashtag because I should have started it sooner. But after this is all said and done, I bet I have 100 news articles that could have been out of Event 201, the live simulated COVID-19 scenario that Bill Gates and company put out in October, a month before this thing started unrolling. And one of the things I didn't even understand, I was like, we have to teach workers how to work in protective gear. I thought, what the hell are you talking about? And even when I read it in Event 201 before it actually happened, but I've been predicting the future because that Event 201 is
and there it is. There it is. I will say that your Twitter feed I don't know of many people that are as active on Twitter as you are. You are 10, 12 a day.
It's because I use it as a repository for ideas and research, and other people enjoy it and they add to it. So I get so much out of it. And then I'm really up on a variety of thinking. It's like open source journalism. It's crowdsourced. It's really fun.
Tell everybody.
Show.
That's what I was getting ready to do, and you beat me to it. Tell everybody how to find you, and especially your not new, but newly efforted YouTube page.
Yes. So I have my own thing at Monica Perez Show. I have my own YouTube channel, which this is going to be on, which is youtube.com/Monica Perez. And then I have my propaganda report stuff, which I do with Binkley, my co-host there. We do some propaganda report deep dives, which I've started to archive onto our new YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/The Propaganda Report. So if you have never heard one of our deep dives, highly encourage you to go and just please, as a favor to me, subscribe to it because I need 1,000 subscribers there. Maybe we throw a commercial up once in a while. And then if you want to hear our daily show, the Drive Time News Blast, that's at thepropreport.com or under Propaganda Report on any podcasting feed that you prefer. And if you want to support the work and get tons of extra content, you can increase your content by 50% if you become a patron. So you can go to patreon.com/Propaganda Report.
Wow, that's a lot of ways to find you.
Yes, but all you have to remember is Monica Perez Show or Propaganda Report. Those are the two ways to go.
Once you have sprinted digitally over to her YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook and website and subscribe, give a little bit of money on the Patreon. Come over to During the Break and do the same thing.
Of course.
I need some reviews.
I'm going to do that.
I need some reviews. I need a Patreon, a couple more Patreons.
Your Patreon is During the Break?
Yeah, it's on my website too. If you go to duringthebreakpodcast.com, it's the button right there at the top that says become a supporter. Oh. I've got 4 supporters so far, a couple $100 a month.
You're going to have 5 in 5 minutes.
Yes. Anyway, but that's what I was going to ask you. I know you're busy today. At some point in time, I want to have a conversation with you on how you handle the Patreon. So behind the scenes, a little how the meal is made. I need to have a conversation.
I stay up all night. I absolutely worry. I don't want charity. I want to give. I want to give people what they want. But at a certain point, I'm not making it. I really am not it's not worth my while as far as I spend so much time. Like my babysitter, I don't have a babysitter anymore because of the Corona times, but my babysitter was making much more than I was.
I'll
So
totally
I was
take
paying
care.
her. I was paying her to watch the kids while I did this, and I mean, I was paying her more than I have ever gotten so far. So that sucks, but that's okay, because now I've started to think about giving people what they want to pay for, making it a value. They can support it out of good conscience. And,
And you're working for the money. You're doing other stuff. So you're spending the time,
I
you're
would
giving them
do,
the content.
and it's not just that. Like if I'm spending 8 hours a day or 6 hours a day curating the news and analyzing the news, so you don't have to chip in and let me be the one to do it. Otherwise, everybody's got to do it half-assedly. So and if it's not worth my while, then maybe I should just become a babysitter and have one person who I can, or a tutor. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe there's a better use of my time.
Could we do this on Saturdays at 3, no matter what? Can we just keep doing this at least?
Yes, and you can invite a screen sharer for 30 minutes or whatever if you want.
I want to do the Eric Buchanan thing, but hey, can you do me one favor? Can you not post the invite to be on the video next week? Because we had 9 people wanting to get. No, it's okay. That's one of my favorite things ever. People kept popping up. They're like, "Bing, I'm ready to join." Bing, I'm like,
that would have been super fun. You should have done it. You should have just gone chaos.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's plan chaos. I like controlled chaos.
Okay.
Controlled chaos.
You know what you should do for your
What should I do?
patrons? You should offer for your patrons that we do that.
Oh, we bring them on?
Yeah, for you, not for me, but like for you. I have too many patrons.
Clint, that'd
I
be
would
good
be
for
happy
you.
to. They would love that, but I do that for them. I have a cocktail party with Binkley every other week for them.
See, I would like to do this. Maybe I
fun.
could start doing this. Maybe for my patrons, I have a couple of big stars like you or Marty Ray or some of the big people I've talked to. And then we have a little private conversation with just us.
Sure. Fine.
And I'll send you like just buckets of money.
Yeah, you just don't abuse the privilege, and I'll be happy to do it.
There's no privilege. I don't abuse anything. I take every second. I don't take any second with you for granted.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica Perez.
Always a pleasure.
I hope
Thanks,
you have
guys, for coming to chat.
Yeah, it was fun.
That was
and Eric
super
Buchanan
fun.
said good show, and all the folks that participated. Go find Monica, help her grow her brand, and then we'll see y'all back next Saturday. Oh, real quick, if there's questions or topics that people watching want me to bring up to you, feel free to private message me, like my group of friends. I will be happy to ask.
I'm going to put this video on my YouTube page, youtube.com/Monica Perez. If you use the comment section for questions for the future,
I'll screenshot it.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody. See y'all.